Moving to text or discourse comprehension would require a reader to make meanings out of extended passages instead of individual or single words or sentences. It is there because usually we communicate in a chain of sentences in our daily life instead of in isolated sentences. So we need to know how to make meanings when we connect various ideas in multiple sentences. So real communication occurs in, as I said earlier, in a chain or in a sequence of sentences. So discourse or text comprehension deals with making meaning with a larger segments of communication instead of isolated sentences. There are two popular terms which are used in this regard. Text is usually used for printed or written text. Discourse is the spoken counterpart of it. And in the recent literature, these two terms are even used interchangeably. Knowing the meanings beyond a sentence level or within a chain of sentences involves both semantic and referential sources. Semantic sources or processing involves knowing the individual meanings of words and sentences, whereas referential processing concerns with finding the relevance of those words and sentences in the real world. There are various factors related to discourse comprehension, and one of the most important among them is local and global structure. This is about knowing the value or the relevance of a sentence within its local and global structure or context. Local discourse structure or microstructure aims at finding the relationship between individual sentences in a discourse or communication, whereas the macrostructure, which is the global structure, finds its relationship with the knowledge of the world in which it is being spoken or written. Other factors involve discourse context, the overall physical, ideological, social context of a discourse or communication. It is very important, and most of the recent studies about discourse comprehension or analysis involve context as the primary factor for the interpretation of various discourses. Linguistic cues, another important area which could help us decipher the meanings of various sentences. These cues are important because these help a reader to follow the flow of a text. And they involve, for example, lexical cues, in which we find there are various connectives, for example, but, however, and not. And they help a reader to understand how various sentences are connected with each other. We can see wherever there would be, however, the ideas being connected would be different from each other. Similarly, there are pronouns, synonyms, antonyms. We got anaphors, anaphoric expressions, which help us highlight the important concepts in the prior text. And then we have syntactic clues, which help us know the value of a certain sentence in a bigger construction of meaning. Sometimes the placement of a sentence in a paragraph highlight its value and help a reader know or a speaker know its real meanings. There are some other organizational features as well, for example, titles or topic headings. Further, we got genre-based knowledge. The type of text is also important to be known in order to gauge its real meanings. For example, if we are reading a newspaper article or listening to a news item on a television program, and in comparison, we are reading a literature novel or we are reading a serious thought by a researcher, our expectations would be different from all these different genres of information. Therefore, the knowledge of genre is important because it leads a reader or listener's expectations. Background knowledge of a text also help reader and listeners making various inferences in relation to the meaning of that text. Similarly, individual readers' characteristics, their differences also influence the making of meaning or the comprehension of a text. For example, the working memory or short-term memory of an individual reader might influence the making of the meaning by that reader or listener. Then long-term memory and the storage of the knowledge in the mind of that particular reader also influences the meanings. Then that reader's personal ability, linguistic ability, or how competent he already is in a certain language would also influence the making of the meaning. And then goals for reading, for what he is reading a certain text, that would also influence the process of meaning making. There are some other sources of coherence in a communication which are important to know the meanings of a text or to comprehend it. We could see we have referential coherence that deals with that there should be consistency in the sources which are referred to in a text or speech. There should be temporal, locational, and causal coherence as well. They all combinedly make a text coherent, and which is almost a must for understanding or comprehending a text.